And good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Illuminate TV. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm so excited to introduce to you our next guest. But before I jump into that, I just want to let everybody know that I go live using StreamYard. So make sure to give StreamYard permission. If you are joining us and want to share comments with us and have questions for our guest, I will be able to see who you are and know that you are commenting. So make sure to give that permission to StreamYard. Today's episode is brought to you by Firefly Strategies Global. We are a communications branding agency creating worldwide impact. And actually, we're just promoting the work of our clients. And it's so easy to promote that work because our clients are doing amazing work in the world. If you have any inkling of interest to find out more about what Firefly Strategies Global agency does, please go to fireflystrategies.com to get more information. And I am your host, Rubina Cohen, and I'm going to give a bio of this amazing human being that's joining us today, Angell Deer of The Sanctuary. And I'm going to read this bio that just is very, very interesting. I'm sure many people will be able to relate to it at some level, maybe not exactly, but at some deep level, we can relate to this bio. So after a career that scaled the heights of corporate success as a CEO of global companies, Angell reached a turning point in his life. Material success and trappings had not made it necessarily made him happy or fulfilled. He had a big degree, a big job, and success that most people aspire for, but he wasn't happy. So he decided to completely change his life and embarked on a journey of self-exploration and meditation that took him to from working with Mother Teresa's mission in India to the jungles of Peru in search of finding meaning in life and fulfillment beyond the material demands of society today. Through seeking to transform his own life to live a life with a higher purpose, he made a life-changing commitment to helping others in their search for peace, harmony, and happiness. Everybody, without further ado, please welcome Angell Deer to the show. Welcome, Angell. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you, Rubina, today.
Thank you. So, what an extraordinary, opening to and a story for your life. And so I want people to kind of hear this because I think right now there's a lot of people who in the past year and a half have really seen that glimmer of what happiness can look like outside of their work environment. And one of the things that as I was driving to work today, there was a show on and they shared a quote, especially for men during the pandemic, because there's been a little bit of interest in like moms and working moms during the pandemic and the burden on them. But this one was particularly about men and fathers, but about how they were able to switch from having their life fit in with their career rather than, and now their career fitting into their life, and that has made them happier as individuals and as men, because men have been, the whole workforce has been designed around this sort of a patriarchal workforce and patriarchal model of working. And so our men have been really, at the forefront of that and just working away and slaving away. And so I could see why from a corporate space, you would want to walk away. So tell us a little bit about that decision and that bio.
Well, I think one of the few questions that I think most of us or all of us are often asking ourselves is, who am I? And what is this life about? and maybe we're not always conscious that it's the big questions to really answer wherever we are. And I guess we can believe very often that we are what we do, our job, our career, and that it's about that money and success and climbing the corporate ladder. But I think in the life of everyone, at some point, we start maybe to question that answer. And we start to question, is this really the type of life I want? How much is this giving me freedom to be, maybe, like you said, a father or a good partner, or someone involved in my community, or someone that can birth that project I had in my heart since I'm a young adult or a late teen. And we quickly realized that, the corporate world as it is structured today, most of the time doesn't allow that, doesn't allow you to do that. And the pandemic has reinforced that. Many people realize, oh my God, I can work from home. Maybe I can work differently, or maybe I don't need to make as much money. Maybe I can set up my life in a different way. So for me, it's interesting because was said, well, I was successful. And I was in those metrics of this old system, in terms of building a big company, in terms of raising a lot of money for my business, having a few hundred employees. But the problem is that there was a mismatch between that external success and what I would call internal success, which is how well connected you are to your emotions, how truly happy and joyful you are in your life. And I think, it's very easy, because I did it for 10 or 15 years, to kind of bypass that and not pay attention to the sign of discomfort, and to just say, well, this is what life is about. This is how it should be. I should just wake up and go to the office and work, very hard until I retire. And when I retired, I will enjoy life. I will enjoy the fruit of my success. And I think millennials, were the first generation starting to question that. And now the last generations, I've talked to people in the corporate sector that say they have a very hard time to recruit people, because people don't want to be in an office 5 days a week. They're like, well, I'd like to be here 2 days a week, but I'd like to be able to work from 3 days a week. And I think even the corporate structures are resisting that, because they don't understand what their culture is if not everybody is in the same room together. How do we manage people that are offsite, that people that are not always present?
Right.
How do we cultivate some kind of sense of belonging and identity? But I think the problem is, in fact, that there was no belonging and identity, aside from all working for the same thing. But that's not really belonging or identity. It's just surviving and making money. So I think it's really, building on inside people. And on the other side, you have a lot of resistance, even from a lot of people in the corporate sector, that are resisting. They say, well, this is just bollocks, this is just a passing time. Will come back after COVID. Everybody's going to come back to the office. Just as a tiny story, a dear friend of mine, she's a global executive in a very large cosmetic company. And she was telling me that they had around, 30% resignation in the last year in their global staff.
Wow.
We're talking about thousands of people that have left the sector.
Wow.
Those people were guaranteed jobs. They had big jobs. They were working from home. They had security. They've never seen that. And right now, their only question is, how are we going to bring back people into the office full time? Because most people that have stayed don't want. They don't really question, why is it that people do not want that anymore? Why are people so unhappy? And for me, that's what was coming up. It's like, this is not the life I want. It's not answering who am I. And it's not answering what my life is about. So, I took a leap of faith.
And it's interesting, because it sounds like the critical point is really, really paying attention to the discomfort. And a lot of what we engage in on a day by day, hour by hour basis is to avoid that.
Yeah, we avoid it. we avoid it, and therefore it comes as a violent outcome, like anger and resistance and judgment and finger pointing. That's common,
Blame,
either
division.
it's in politics or in corporates or in families. It's just the
Totally.
way we react when there is an inner suffering that we don't want to address, and then we start screaming at others because something is screaming at ourselves inside, and we haven't taken care of it our whole life. Basically, we just try to numb it in any way we can, either through money, through distractions, whatever works for us.
Totally agree. So you had that, right? You had that moment of, well, you had years, it sounds like, of discomfort that you were avoiding, and then there was a moment of like really recognizing it. And for you, and the reason I'm kind of focusing on this is because I think it's important for people to see that those are the moments that we need to pay attention to that could really open you up to a whole new world and of fulfillment and joy and peace and happiness. So the discomfort, like how long did it take for you to kind of recognize, oh my God, this is not the life that I want, to actually then getting to the point of launching the sanctuary? What was that time period and what did you go through?
Well, I guess it took 3 or 4 years or maybe 5. The discomfort was building, but you're told that it is part of the deal you're making when you work in a company, that you can't just be happy. It has to be hard work, that you cannot take the holidays you want or be with your
Yeah, it's
family as much as
normal.
it's normal. It's just the way things are. And so it's very hard to not just it being conscious, but to question that reality, to question that. And also because there is not yet a fully expanded other model,
Totally.
there is not always a place to look at. And very often you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to become that kind of person that live that kind of life. It's very judgmental with that because we don't have the experience and we don't really inquire about it. But I think, what I think is interesting is that for me, at some point, it's like I just knew life as it is was not acceptable anymore. I didn't know what life would be or should be. So my inquiring time, my time doing volunteering works in India and in Nepal, and then really starting to feel like, wow, I feel really good when I do that. It feels like when I go to bed in the evening, and even if the work was really hard, working at Mother Teresa, I was working with dying people, was not emotionally always easy. But there was something in terms of the depth of connection and what I was receiving that I've never experienced anywhere else. So, I started to really have elements to really prove that my questioning was valid. In fact, I could have just stayed in New York, and just look at how most executives lives. Some people live very happy and balanced, and then you should not question it. But many people live with anxiety, with lack of sleep, with depressions, with stress, and with a lot of disease and syndromes that comes out of this lifestyle. So, it's very easy to, I guess, avoid it. The cities and the Western life is designed to make us avoid it. But I think at some point come a time, and that's what we call midlife crisis. For me, it was before midlife, where many people question it. And sometimes, people go all the way to retirement and they're not yet happy in their retirement or at the end of their career, despite they have a lot of money and they are, successful business people. But there's a lot of unresolved emotional issues. And, it's a personal choice. I'm not saying, do it because I did it. I just say, if that works for
Right.
you, keep doing it. If that doesn't work for you, there might be another way. And
Well,
that's
and
where I think
there's
it's
a
interesting.
way. I think sometimes, like you said, there's this sort of violent or very strong reaction to what you might have been because of the level of distraction of not paying attention. But I think there's an opportunity for corporate America and for people working in corporate America to recognize that perhaps there needs to be a way for people to connect to the level that you're talking about within their environment. There's more than just the objective of the company, right? There are human beings involved.
Yeah.
And so the human element, I feel like, is missing. And as you said, there aren't any models right now. Any
when there is
developed models.
or when there is a model, it's not genuine. It's a way to
Right.
say, okay, we are going to make the office environment much more friendly, and we're going to do all those things, but it's a way to retain people. It's not a true genuine interest in each person, freedom, liberation,
The level of care, right?
opening. Yeah, because if you really nourish someone to all those desires, they might leave, and you need to be okay with that. So you need to
Yes.
really rethink the way you look at your workforce and say, okay, what do we want to do here? Maybe we just want to cultivate people for 2 to 5 years, and then we know we might support them into doing something else. And that's our mission. We have something that is beyond the corporation, which is basically a reflection about your own life, is that your purpose in life is beyond yourself. It's beyond your
Yes.
own money and your own greed and all of that. It's what impact I'm going to make. And I think it's happening for people. It's clearly, been accelerated with COVID, but that reflection is the same on the more bigger level of a corporation or even of a country, and we see the problem we had in this country with politics and all of that. There's extreme level of anger, which any modern psychologist and people that study what's happening say, well, this is unprocessed grief. That's what anger is. It's a protection. It's a boundary that was crossed. It's very fiery, but behind it is something that was not grieved. There is a pain there that we don't want to acknowledge. And, look at how much anger there is around there. And very often, if you walk in the psychology field, or if you've done some research on that, there is a pain, a wound that's unprocessed at a global level, community level, family level, and individual level. So it's right there.
Yep. So, so you go through this journey. You're meditating for 3 to 4 years, and you awaken to this idea to launch a place that people can come to really access and work on that wound. I feel like that is really the key, the healing that we need to individually give ourselves, right? Somebody can't heal us. We have to do the work. So tell me about that, this sort of idea that came to you, and how did it come to you, and how has it come to fruition today?
Well, I think it came from, my experience of those tools, basically. It's realizing that along my journey, I tried many different things, and I started to realize that in every traditions and cultures, there are tools to support not only transformation, but happiness and joy. Either, you can go from Christian mystic to Judaism, to India, to Buddhism, all those lineages of religions or spiritual orientations, they had, or they still have, practices that help people deal with the difficulty of life, the struggle of life that is universal. As the Buddha say, suffering is universal. It's going to be part of your experience. So as I started with Mother Teresa, which is, a Christian organizations, but there was a lot of elements as I was there, from a mass in the morning and a mass in the evening after work, to times of prayer and meditation, to times of connection and sharing. When you hold someone's hands and they're dying, in front of you, that's something that you need to process. And how do you hold space for that? And that was, a Christian faith-based organization. And then I moved to a more Buddhist organization, when I went to Nepal or northern India, and I went to where the Dalai Lama was, and then to other type of faith. And then I started finding those tools, and I was like, oh wow, this is really useful. It doesn't matter your belief, your religion, none of what we're doing are religious, or even, I would say, even what we call spiritual. It's more about consciousness. It's about, how do I make the darkness in me conscious, and what tools do I have to work with it to become a better human being. And I think, some people are not interested by that, and I honor that. And some people are like, wow, that sounds interesting. So I started to gather those tools, starting to basically just do online events and talks and workshops for people that were interested, to try to apply it. And then people were like, wow, this works really well. This is really helping me. My relationship with my husband or my wife is better. The way I come to work is just different. I sleep better. I've stopped taking, my pills for depression. I used to drink every night, and I'm not drinking anymore. So you see results. People were seeing results. And so that was the idea of creating a place where we could kind of foster those teachings. And along the way, I met Native American people and elders where, this is the land we're sitting on. We also have beautiful tools that are embedded in their way of life. It's not separated from the way they live. And so all of that, that was the idea of the sanctuary, which come from that old Latin word, and sanctum, which means a place of refuge. And it's more, it's not like, people come for refuge. It's not that. It's, can you find a sanctuary inside of you when life is overwhelming, when things seems to be difficult? Have I cultivated inside of me a place that feels that I can help hold myself? That's the true sanctuary. That's your inner sanctuary. That's what I'm interested in, and that's really what we promote with our online events or workshops, or even when we discuss here, things like that.
That's amazing, because I think that we tend to seek out gurus and people who have gone through the journey, and not that you're calling yourself a guru, but or go to a place where we are healing. But what I love about what you're saying is that, okay, yes, there's this place that gives you access to really that inner sanctuary. So you're coming to the sanctuary, but you're really tapping back into that inner self and finding the healing within.
Yeah, and it's a more it's a holistic way to look at health. That's a little bit different. It's not about me or following me. It's about you and the tools you can have for your life. So it's like going to a doctor that tell you, well, you should take that pill number A 3 times a day, that pill number B. Here's the difference, that the prescriptions are practices that can help you. So it's really giving you tools that you can use in your life, and check out for yourself. If it doesn't work, don't do it.
And that's the thing. It's like, what symptoms do you get from like trying, meditation versus journaling, or taking a walk into nature? Like you're like, you get to discover these cool tools and play with them and discover for yourself what's going to work for you. And so, again, you're not telling people this is the tool that you need, Rubina, but more like, here are tools. You go and discover for yourself which one's going to work for you. And by the way, if you have questions, I can help answer some of those for you, right? And
I can help you along the way. I can help you answer them. I cannot answer for you anything. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah. I don't pretend that, and I don't want to, because I truly believe that at the end of the day, each and every one of us has wisdom. If you're suffering, if you're really in pain, this is wisdom, because something is telling you in your body that something is not working for you. And so you already have a voice that wants to be liberated, that don't want to feel the pain, and a voice that's telling you something is creating pain. So you already know. But if your toolbox is only a hammer and what you need here is a screwdriver, well, here's a screwdriver. Try that out. It's going to be much easier to remove that screw. So that's more about that. And sadly, you know, in our Western education system, especially, and then the corporate system, which is basically, they are two of the same, because the education system is designed to make workers for the workforce of that specific time. While you're only given a certain number of tools, and very often they are very limited and they are very similar. And yet all over the world today, as thousands of years ago, there are people that say there is a tool that works really well for that, for anxiety, for example, or for anger, or for depression, or for lack of sleep. And when you try them, well, they work, because, you know, people have been using them for thousands of years. And if they're using it, it's because it works, not just because someone told them to use it. So, you know, it's available, it's right there, as long as people are willing to explore something maybe slightly different.
So talk about some of those tools, because I know you have a variety of them. One of the tools that I love using is meditation. I do find it to be just such a valuable tool in my life whenever I am having sort of those hectic, chaotic moments, or I'm feeling unsettled with anything in my life. I think it is meditation just helps you turn everything off and like really listen. And it's interesting that I have communications as my work in the world that I do is communications. And oftentimes we're not communicating with our inner selves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're like, we're just like talking to people. We're just like talking. And one thing that we teach is we need to listen to our audience, have them tell you, and it just makes communication so much easier. But what we're not told is listen to ourselves first as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so meditation has allowed me to turn off my own thoughts and the talking that's happening inside me, to really listen to what, you know, the wisdom that is within me, and, you know, the ancestors and generally generational voices that are there, that are kind of speaking to me. And so tell us some of the tools that, you know, are accessible to people through your online programs and at the sanctuary.
Well, yeah, I would say meditation is a big one, which I would also call more mindfulness. So being really, like you said, being more present with our bodies and feeling. And that can be done through nature walks, through sitting in a circle together, through doing a specific activity. Breath is a big one. You know, I'm a certified breathwork practitioner, and breathwork, you know, is now invading the corporate sectors and big corporations, and, you know, famous big CEOs. I've known those tools now, experience it. It's a very profound tools. It's a very deep experience in the way we're doing it. You know, it's a 1 hour experience where you go really deep with your breath inside your body, and that can work amazingly well on physical, emotional, and mental traumas or issues. And then what we call shamanic work, which very often is misunderstood, which are basically nature-based practices. So how do we work with nature, which is a big word, it encompasses many things, to come back in equilibrium? And the foundation of that is the acknowledgement that nature is always self-regulating and always in harmony. When you go in a forest, the trees, the soil, the microbiome in the soil, the mushrooms, the animals, the wind, the air, the waters, everything is in constant relations and balancing itself. So if something happened to one element, and they say it doesn't rain a lot for a little while, then the soil is going to react a certain way. The trees are going to react a certain way. So they're going to find their balance back. Because we have separated ourselves from that. We're not separated, but we have separated ourselves.
Yeah, because we also have natural human self-regulating that's happening within us, but we're inhibiting that and we're blocking it with.
We're blocking it, but we have a biology and a system that is designed for that.
Yes.
I have a PhD in veterinary medicine, so I train as a doctor for animals, and I study biology, for 7 or 8 years,
Yes.
and anatomy and all that. And when you look at the complexity of the human body or animal bodies, it's very complex, and even science, doesn't explain most of it. In fact, once you start going really deep in it, you realize very often you just come up with more questions than answers. So when you use those nature-based practices, those ancient practices, they basically bring you back into the system, into that natural system of equilibrium, that capacity to self-regulate. And you use the wisdom, because that's wisdom. If the forest know how to self-regulate and we don't, if the animals know how to sleep or the flowers know how to sleep but we don't, we clearly have something to learn from them. And that can sound a little bit like, oh, wow, this is a weird statement, but that's just the reality. It's one of my relations, one of the animals or elements in nature has this capacity and I lost it. So what can I learn from that? And what is my way to communicate with it, to be in relation with it, so I can heal my trauma? I know it, like last year or 2 years ago, I did a big training for a very large corporation in the US. It's the largest hotline for women that are victim of abuse at home. Mm-hmm. And so they serve around 20 to 30,000 women every month. So it's a very big organization. Mm-hmm. And they have all those social workers, those women that take the calls because they've just been, abused or something like that. But those social workers, they are women, and they have to relate to another woman on the phone that is sometime in immediate danger for her life. And those workers do, 30 or 40 calls a day. So they experience what's called secondary trauma. It's not, the trauma is not happening to them, it's happening to someone they relate to.
Yes.
So we design a program to help those workers to deal with that stress, because they are passionate about their mission. They very often they have had that experience in their personal life, so they can relate to their client, but they don't always have had the tools to self-regulate, to help. So we designed a program to really help them to better communicate, to cleanse at the end of the day their stress, so when they go back home, they don't lash out on their husband.
Yes,
because it's a lot of stress. So you see, it's very concrete and practical. It's directly applicable even to the corporate sector or to the world we're living in. And I think that's what I find quite powerful with all those tools, is like people are like, oh, wow, I tried that and I slept for the first time the whole night in 10 years. Well, that's great. That's what the tools are for.
Because that's a big shift for a lot of people, because there are so many people who don't sleep, that think it's normal to get very little sleep, and or just not have a nourished sleep. And so we just take some of these things that we're dealing with as normal things. Mm-hmm. So, what do you have, like, it sounds like, I talk to people, and so many people know they should be doing this, right? They should be spending time meditating and all of this stuff. But there's still a lot of people who aren't, and are continuing to, reach for that drink or turn on the distracting TV shows. And I say that without judgment, because believe me, I've been one of those people, and still to that, there are times when those old habits show up, even though I've spent so much time working on developing my tools since my 20s. But there are moments when, like, just the society we live in and that we've been raised in, and the habits that are around us, they're so ingrained in all of us. And so how do we start to, listen to that voice? Because they say it out loud. My friends will tell me, oh, I should be journaling, I should be taking more walks, and I should be meditating. And they notice that they aren't fulfilled and happy to the degree that they know their potential to be
Yeah.
that
Well,
happy.
first, I think you cannot make someone do something they don't want to do. So for
Right.
me, I'm not interested in convincing anyone. I'm not. I'm not preaching to anyone or anything. I'm here to answer the people that comes or call me and say, hey, I need help. I need some tools. So I believe at the end of the day, and we've all been there and we might go back to there on and off. Until life as it is become unacceptable, our life as it is become unacceptable, we don't really make true changes. If we're just trying to tame a little bit that anxiety or that lack of sleep, but we know we are in a very toxic either relationship or job or whatever it is situations, and we're not ready to make that change, no amount of meditation, breath work, or nature work is going to solve it. You're going to feel better for a few hours or a few days. And then
Right.
basically, it's like if you keep drinking poison, whatever amount of medicine you're going to take, if you take that pill to solve it, but you keep eating really bad food, that's not going to help. And that's what people do. They take pills to lower their cholesterol, but they don't really look at every single aspect of what's creating that in the first place. Sometimes they do, but sometimes we do it too late also. I think what's usually the motivator for people, which is sadly a problem, is when it's really too late. Not when they just have a lack of sleep or stress and anxiety, but when they go to the doctor and he tell them you have a problem with your liver, you have a problem with your digestion system, your kidneys are not functioning, your blood pressure is a problem at the moment. So people only take it seriously once basically they have a blood test or they have the symptoms of something that is very damaging, and then they might go one way or another, just taking a pill for it or really seeing what am I doing to myself. So for some people, they go before that. But it's very common, I think, that people try maybe go on antidepressant, and after 10 years on it, they're like, I don't want to keep doing that. What else could I do? In fact, it happens often that I have a psychotherapist that call me because they want me to work with one of their clients with them, in partnership, because Western medicine can be very powerful and very positive, but sometimes it works even better if it's associated with holistic ways which are more gentle for the body, which don't create side effects and things like that. So sometimes we're never ready to do that. Sometimes people just keep going, down that rabbit hole, and maybe one day we get a diagnostic of something really bad that's happening to our health. Our body is very resilient, and we have so much
Totally.
capacity to resist change that sometimes it can take a long time for us to acknowledge that there is a problem and that we're going to take care of it. And it's so easy to just point fingers. Oh, my boss is responsible, or my partner is responsible, or my mother is responsible. We can point fingers in many directions. But in Native American wisdom, they say when you point your fingers, sorry, I'm going to do it that way, as someone, 3 fingers are pointing towards you.
Pointing towards.
So that's what they say. So when you point fingers, 3 of them are pointing towards you. Because at the end of the day, it's being accountable and see how did I create maybe the situation I am in, the choices I made. And you have to be gentle with yourself when you do that. You don't have to scream at yourself and be angry at yourself, but you need to just acknowledge, well, I need to change, and what can I do? And and then find the tool that works for you.
And that to me, that was sort of the flipping point in my life when I recognized, because I think especially when you're dealt with maybe childhood trauma and people in your life that were supposed to protect you and take care of you and things like that, you grow up with wanting to blame people and, and so, but then the empowering moment for me was when I was like, I get to do that. I don't have to ask people and bang my head against the wall, to the point where I'm like, I need this from you, or you need to change in order for me to feel better. And, it just wasn't fulfilling and it wasn't happening. So then I was like, am I just, gonna be unhappy because people around me aren't changing or giving me what I need? And, and that was those moments of like, when I was sitting quietly and meditating, where I started to feel that fire within myself of like, oh, I have everything I need already inside of me. I just need to start pulling out the things and giving them to myself. And that was such an empowering moment in my life. And, and sitting with the discomfort. I think that's another big thing. And you mentioned, self-regulation and kind of looking at nature. And one of the things that I remember looking at was trees, just looking at our trees. They go through these cycles of death and rebirth and death and rebirth. It's the same tree, right? Like, and it's not necessarily death to the degree like its roots are still there, right? It's just going through its discomfort period and then it's coming back to bloom. And I think we as human beings avoid that. Like our evolution, we go through discomfort so we can grow. We go through these moments and we just don't want to do that. We just are like, oh, I have a cold, so I'm going to give myself medicine and like stay inside and be scared. And it's like, it's a cold. Like we're going to feel the discomfort, rest in bed, and I had this whole conversation with my sister. It's like have a cold and be okay with it. Be with the discomfort. And I think that's when we also then can appreciate pleasure, right? The things that please us and wanting that in our lives. So yeah, I just feel like nature has such a great blueprint for us and we're a part of it. So it's almost just like opening back up to what's in front of us and where we came from, right? So yeah, so tell our audience, tell people that are watching some of the experiences that they can have at the sanctuary, and what are some upcoming, events or programs that are happening.
So every week we gather online for a breathwork ceremony, a shamanic breathwork ceremony. So it's a 2-hour, connections.
Oh wow.
I think 2020, because of the COVID and the pandemic, really saw an explosion of people desiring, and maybe they had more time also to do it, coming to that.
And when does that happen every week?
So it's every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So some week, we skip it because sometimes I just take time off, but most of the time it's every Saturday at 7 p.m.
Eastern.
Once a month, at the beginning of every month, we have a time of a call of communion, which is basically connected to what's happening in nature at that moment, the solstice, the season, all the things that are changing, and learning from ancient wisdom about how can we align, it's kind of this idea of reconnecting to the big cycles of nature. How do I align myself in that? Whatever I'm doing, I could be a business person in New York City, or I could live in nature. It doesn't matter. It's applicable to everyone, and getting that connection. So we do that, at the beginning of every month, on the weekend. So I think it's coming on July 3rd for the next one. And then we have gatherings here. So it's not on the land, it's on state parks nearby sometime, like the one coming up in August. It's called the Shamanic Camp. Is that we're going to bring people in nature to a beautiful location nearby here called Crystal Lake, where we are going to basically for 2.5 days go much more deeply into those experiences and what we are talking about. And you know, it's very much what you were mentioning. It's really about deep listening. It's about, you know, obviously we go in a nice place and we sit together and we have good conversation. But it's really what we're trying is to slow down people enough and their mind so they can start hearing the voices that they don't want to hear, that they distract themselves from. And, you know, everybody has their way of numbing the pain. We are a society that basically designed for that. You know, people drink alcohol, you know, every day, just a little glass. Oh, it's just a glass, but it's a way to just relax and numb the pain. You know, I stopped drinking alcohol now, I don't know, almost 10 years ago, and it completely changed my health. And sometimes we do it through Netflix, and sometimes we do it through work. We're just going to bury ourselves in it. Or sometimes we just go away every weekend so we can relax, but then we come back to the poison location or environment.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested about say, well, do this and you're going to feel better after and things are going to change, because nothing will change if you don't change things in your life. What I'm interested in is that, can you incorporate some of those things in your life? Maybe in the morning when you wake up, doing a 10 minutes exercise with your breath, and see how you're feeling during the day. How do you communicate with your loved one? How did you sleep that night? How is your blood pressure, by the way? How are your cholesterol levels since you're doing that? And then people realize, wow, this has a tremendous impact. Because our body knows how to come back to balance if we put them in the right condition. You know, that's how people heal cancer, heal some disease. You know, the body has a capacity to heal. But
Yes.
we need to give it the opportunity. And for example, sleep is a big one. You know, sleep is a time we recharge. You know, our immune system is getting ramped up. You know, so many things happen and repairs in the body while we sleep. But if I don't sleep enough, and if I do that for months or years, that's going to have an impact. So I'm more interested about knowing how you can sleep better than maybe treating what's happening to you that's a consequence of that lack of sleep or that stress.
Yes, I like what you're saying, because not interested in telling people, you know, your life is going to get better if you do this. But one of the things that I like to do is I do this thing. I learned it from a diet, actually, and it's called the crowding out method. So rather than restrict yourself, right, you're actually adding the things that you should be just adding to your plate. So in the general sort of, you know, day, I'm adding to my plate the meditation, the journaling, the breath work. And so as you start adding those things, I think you start to crowd out
Everything else.
all the things that you sort of have a habit of going to, like coffee and alcohol and Netflix. And, you know, it's like, oh, I just made time for this other stuff. And then the other stuff just sort of naturally fell away. There was just no room for it anymore. And so I think, you know, your programs like yours, where you're not interested in telling people like, oh, you need this lifestyle so you can live a better lifestyle, but really just introducing people to breath work, that then, yeah, they start to feel like, oh, if I start adding this into my life, perhaps it will knock out the cholesterol, it will knock out the anxiety. And to me, that's a fun, playful way to engage in, you know, examining your personal development as well as just psychological growth. And so I love that. And especially the practice piece too. So there's the play of like, hey, I'm just going to introduce this, but then to show up every Saturday to do breath work with you, it's like adding that element of practice as well. And so I think those two things, when you're playing and practicing and you have a cohort of people and a community of people that you can kind of, you know, do this with, that support you along the way, I think that's hugely important, that connecting for a like cause.
Yeah, and it provides, you know, accountability, because you know you need to connect with someone, and that's why often we need someone to support us in the process. It's like your parents. Did you do your homework? They were just checking
Yes.
on you that you did it. So it's like a doctor. Is going to say, hey, did you take your treatments? Did you take your pill today? So here it's like, hey, did you do your practice? How is it going? What are you experiencing with it? So we make it a ritual, what we call a ritual, which is basically any kind of practice, but it's done in a regular basis. Maybe 5 minutes meditation every morning, maybe breath work every week. And the power of ritual, it's because it's a regular things that our body get used to.
Yes.
Like your ritual could be going to the gym every day. So the first few weeks is going to be really hard. And then when you have the rhythm, your body is going to ask for it. It's going to have to want for it. And it provides stability. In a world that's very unstable, there's a lot of things changing all the time. Maybe one day you feel good, one day you don't feel good. But your daily practice, your ritual is always there. So it kind of gives you a place of safety, a place where you're going to nurture yourself. And those place of safety, of relaxation, they allow the body to heal. They allow the body to find balance again. So I really believe in the power of those rituals, in the way we present them. That's basically people used to do. People in the ancient ways, used to have all those rituals, celebrating even the solstice or things like that. It's a reminder, because we come together. It's beyond just the solstice. It's a time of gathering. It's a time of acknowledging something bigger than ourselves.
Yep.
It's not about me. It's about the community. It's about the planet. And our world, sadly, has kind of destroyed a lot of that. And people are in pain because of it. It's obvious. Just turn on the TV. Just turn on the TV. It's just obvious that it doesn't work. And everybody that challenges that is just wanting to be blind, because you cannot not know anymore. You cannot not know the problem that's going on in the social aspect, economical aspect, environmental aspect, every part of society. So we cannot say this model is working. We cannot say this is the answer and I just have to swallow it and I just have to take it as hard and as long as I can. We know the consequence. You cannot say I don't know what could be the consequence. We already know that.
Totally. And I just want to kind of go back to this point about ritual, because I think it's such an important thing that you just brought up. Ritual also, I feel like, it supports the self, the inner self, and then the larger purpose. And I think we have created rituals that, in this world and going to work every day, like grab your coffee, get in the car, drive to work, sit on the computer, come home, have a drink, go to sleep, and
that's
it's
our
like
rituals.
this.
Yeah, that's our modern rituals.
Those are our modern rituals, but they have no connection to the larger purpose of helping us answer, who am I, on this planet. And I think, coming
and they have
back
no connection
where we
to
started,
health. They're not connected to health. Many
they're
of
not
those
connected to
rituals are
health.
unhealthy. They're very unhealthy.
Exactly. And so I think what we need to do is reclaim, and part of the work and why I wanted you on today and talk about the sanctuary and your work is reclaiming that word of ritual as a tool, as a process to healing ourselves and connecting to the larger purpose and greater health and happiness on the planet. And that, I think, is where the disconnect is for our community, myself included. But for a lot of us, the disconnect is, what is a ritual really supposed to be doing for us? Not necessarily adding money and flow into the economy and capitalism, but really helping the whole well-being of the planet and everything that is on this planet as well. Yeah. So that's a big thing, but it's like, it's so weird. It starts with you. It starts with us individual people taking those little steps, and
that's the only thing you have control over is yourself. And when
yes,
you realize how hard it is to even change things with yourself, you probably give up the idea of changing others, because when you have a patterns, when you have anger, when you have whatever addiction, whatever it is, it can be really hard to change. So, this idea that someone else needs to change for us to feel better is basically a deflection of seeing what you could change to feel better.
Yeah.
Where is that pain? And yeah, it's much easier to point the fingers, because that's where my problems are from. Either because they are Republicans or Democrats, or because they're Black, or because they're women, or because they're immigrants, or because they're religious, or because they're not religious. You can go on and on that rabbit hole as long as you want.
Yeah.
But very often, it's always, and it's not me saying that. It's modern psychology that says there is a wounded child there. There is an old trauma, and that child is basically just angry and having tantrums. So we might be in an adult body, but inside what's really moving is a very young part of us that needs care, that needs love, that needs attention, and that needs what we call reparenting. And our world, because we don't have rite of passages, we don't have ceremonies to help us grow up. The only one that probably exists is just for women when they give birth, when they get their moon. Those are big rite of passage into adulthood and then motherhood. But men don't really have any. And even the one for the women are not very celebrated. Very often they are medicalized, or they're shamed, or they're pushed away. So we don't really grow up. Francis Weller, talks a lot about that. We are all adult bodies, but it was inside a child that has never grown up. And our goal is to address that and to make that grow, so we can be mentally stable, we can be emotionally supportive, and we know how to love. We know already how to love and to soften our hearts in a society that tells us to harden it all the time.
Thank you so much. I would love for you to share how people can participate and be in touch with you and the services that you're providing and giving access to. Share your website, tell people where you are on social media, and then we'll be sharing all of those links in the comments below the video, because this will be an evergreen video that people can go back to and watch. Share that with our audience. How can we get in touch?
Well, people can go on our website at the sanctuaryheal.com, thesanctuaryheal.com. They can find us on Instagram at the Sanctuary NY. They can also find me on Facebook, the Sanctuary NY, or even look for me on Clubhouse. Now I'm doing some talks there. So look for Angell Deer there, and we're talking about all of that, also the themes, and so any platforms out there, on iTunes podcast, just search for the Sanctuary or Angell Deer, and you can follow us, and hopefully try something online one day, and then I'd love to hear how it worked for you. When you tried it. At the end of the day, if you don't do it, you will never know. And if you do it, it didn't work, well, that was not for you. And if it worked and you feel better, great. It's exciting to hear about.
I had an amazing breathwork experience a year and a half ago, and I've always wanted to circle back and do something. So I, for one, will be showing up to that Saturday breathwork gathering that you have, because I totally believe in the breath being an amazing tool for healing. So thank you, Angell, for being
so
here.
Much, Rubina.
And I'm sure the audience receives so much value from your story and from the work that you're doing. Please stay in touch, and I will be sharing all information here with everybody so that they can be in touch with you and follow you. And I have to say, I love and enjoy your stories, your Facebook stories. Some of them are so funny, but they have sort of that nature, ancient wisdom bent to it, and it's like hilarious, and it's so on point as well. The recent one you did about ancestors, that was hilarious. I was just laughing out loud. So thank you. Continue to do your amazing work, and stay in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Rubina.
Well, there you have it. Another awesome interview with a fantastic guest. As Angell shared, the website to get more information about the sanctuary and the work that Angell is doing is thesanctuaryheal.com. And you can find him on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Clubhouse, just all sorts of places and ways for you to engage in this work. Illuminate TV happens every week on Thursday, 9 a.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Eastern. If you have a request for somebody that you feel like should be interviewed and needs to be highlighted, Illuminate TV is all about highlighting luminaries, doing impactful work, creating worldwide impact. We talk to individuals, we're talking to individuals within organizations and businesses that have this sort of impact-driven mission in the world. So if you know anybody that would be a great guest for the show, send me a message, let me know. I would love to consider them. But next week we have Let There Be Light International joining us, an amazing organization. I'm really, really excited to highlight them. And the following week, we're hoping to have a fantastic organization called Tomorrow's Women on the show. So stay tuned, stay in touch on social media, and I will see you back here next week. Bye, everyone.